I know that there's going to be a lot of battle sequences. And Brian, you get that moment where you one punch a man to death, essentially.
I've done it on a regular basis.
Riders of the Mark, brothers of Rohan,
There was an older tale.
arise!
It was very comfortable going back, and there was something that was familiar about it, going back into the world of Middle-earth. But going back and in a different form, especially anime, I realized how much I didn't know. Thank God we were working with a master of the form.
I mean, he was just actually just a fan. I mean, he was a huge fan of the films, and so he just started out as a fan of the films, and didn't imagine that he would get an offer to do an anime adaptation, and on top of that, it's going to be a film, and so when the offer came, okay, I mean, yes, it's an opportunity that obviously, you don't say no to, you get that one, once in a lifetime or two, maybe twice. but that's one of the big reasons why he took it on. But then at the same time, okay, I mean, we do this in the form of anime, but how do you make that into something that the audience, we're not talking small fan groups. We're talking billions of fans out there, and who love these films. How do you create something that they can go, okay, well, you know what, that's worth seeing. That's worth going to the theater. This feels like the world that we loved. And so that was a huge challenge for him. So without working together with, someone like Philippa and the folks at Weta, Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, I mean, it would have been impossible because it had to feel familiar and it had to be authentic, not just to the text, obviously to the text, but also to this film universe that was created by these guys.
What's interesting about this story, and Kamiyama was never afraid of it, is actually the most epic moment, the thing that should be the climax of the film, this giant battle and the burning of Edoras and this attack. It comes at the end of the first act.
Now, obviously, the Battle of Helm's Deep is such a monumental moment in the original films and in the books. I'd love to know, how did you approach this siege and this time at the Hornburg in such a way that it would feel, fresh for longtime fans?
Yeah, because I agree. That is that is untouchable in the films. It's so epic. But that is largely action-based. They're in an active battle for a lot of that. Whereas what's interesting here was a lot of the battle had played out and then we arrive at the Hornburg. And so we were looking at a much longer siege situation, which was exciting for us to kind of really go into that space in a deeper way. What we found really cool was, there's suffering on both sides in the stalemate. And at some point it's going to break. And there is this great horror that begins to unfold where the Rohirrim are seeing their doom, their impending doom, this thing that Wolf is creating to breach these walls just out of reach. And playing that out was something that was really exciting for us.
Sort of sets up a ticking clock.
Ticking clock of there's nothing they can do. And, there was great tension in that.
And once again, though, it's kind of interesting talking about this question and the previous one about, sort of Waihera. It's like we get to see the Hornburg or the defense of the Hornburg or the strategy around the Hornburg from a sort of a non-traditional sort of general or leader or commander, So, I mean, it is inherently different.
And, we had the great privilege of being in a position where we get to create that link to Helm's Deep. That was really, really cool.
What is that?
Open the gates! It's the king!
The gate is stopped! Go!
What are you doing? Rohan still needs you.
No, Hera. They need you. You must lead them now.
Lord of the Rings has a tradition of strong women, but I think this film foregrounds a woman in a way that feels new to the franchise and exciting. When you were approached about this role, what were there influences from the films? Were there influences from other places? How did you approach bringing Hera to life?
I mean, I felt quite lucky in the sense that I didn't feel potentially as tied down, because she is a character, but they've grown her into a much larger character than was maybe written, which meant that I was permitted to play, and I was allowed to work out, who she is, how would she behave in certain situations. And what was wonderful was having, Philippa and Phoebe and Artie there who know Lord of the Rings inside and out, and if I had a question, I could come to them. I think it's wonderful having the ancestors of the Rohirrim who we already know and love in the trilogy.
I am no man.
But it was lovely because I was given free range, and if I did need to have any kind of pointers, I had people who I could ask who knew everything.
We cannot show weakness, not to her.
Advance!
I was told early on that there's a certain vulnerability to Wolf, which I sort of tried to carry on, which I tried to carry through the performance. And I think with his narrative and his goal in the movie, I think where he puts on a brave face and there's this big facade with Wolf, I think a lot of it is steeped in vulnerability, and it comes from a place of being a little bit lost inside, I think. So I think that note that I got about having a vulnerability about him 9 times out of 10, I think was a huge help for me. So to sort of like try and push that through and carry that narrative was a big help.
It's the two children of these two sort of, super brash guys end up at the center of this.
They inherit this conflict.
That's right. And so, if we're asking why Hera, then Hera, it's like, well, it's Hera and Wolf going head to head. They inherit the battle. So it's, and it didn't really feel very Tolkien to base it around Wolf. It just seemed like a natural fit, and one that would really draw in a lot of drama and high stakes.
You may wear a crown upon your head, but that does not make you a king.
To whom are you pledged?
Death!